All right. Fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody. It is July 23rd, 4:02 p.m. Eastern Time. My name is Daniel, and I'm with VantagePoint AI. And today we are going to be talking about a lot of things. First of all, welcome back. It's been a few weeks since we got a chance to get together. So I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to get logged into the live. I've got my chat pulled up over here. Hey, Jerry, send me all the information on the be sure that I get to see it. Not sure what you mean, Jerry, but I'm glad you are here. Glad you're, hey, Norman, to see you're waiting and you're here. Fantastic. Welcome, welcome. Going to give everybody a chance to get logged in. Our scheduled start time was, we started right on time today, 4 o'clock Eastern. And today is Tuesday, the 23rd. Let me just make sure everything is working on my side of things and that you can see my screen. You should have my video up on the screen. I'll be sharing my charts here in a second and you can hear my voice as long as all that's working for you. Gwen, hello. William, hi, glad you're here. Looks like ATL Extra checking in. Hey, Jamal, nice to see you. Got to see you last week and meet you in person here in Tampa, so I'm glad you're able to join today's session. Chris, looks like everything's working and you guys can hear me okay, right? Everything is from a volume standpoint. We should be good to go. I always want to make sure that we don't leave anybody behind. So good. We just do one last cross check and make sure we're good here. Noel, you're on. I see you. I see you in the room. Am I on? Yeah, good. What an active day today. You know, we had, from a market standpoint, we've had some activity from an earnings standpoint. We've had some activity, so lots to talk about. Just in general, why we're here, so everybody is on the same page. My name's Daniel. I'm with VantagePoint. I've got about 25 years experience in the markets and 13 of those utilizing VantagePoint. And what I'm going to do today is walk through how I use the artificial intelligence to wade through all this volatility. We know that there's a lot of earnings going on. It's earnings season. If you don't know that, surprise, right? Which means there's a lot of volatility in the markets. Plus, it's an election year, and we all know we've had a lot of different things going on from an election standpoint in the news and affecting the markets. And I don't know about you, but when you think about earnings and you think about election year and you think about just general market trends, when volatility increases, it can be increasingly difficult to figure out what the market is doing, or better yet, expected to do. If you're in this session and you have that problem that a lot of traders have, where it's like, I just don't know, there's just so much going on from different angles and different perspectives that I need help. If that sounds like something you've thought or felt before, give me some love in the chat and let me know that is something that you've struggled with in the past, you struggle with now, and that's what I want to focus on today. So hopefully, if that is the case, I can provide some clarity on how to utilize artificial intelligence to wade through all that. But give me some feedback over in the chat and let me know if that's something that you've experienced before, and just wondering if that's an opportunity for you. Because if it is, my goal today is to try to help you find ways to beat that opportunity through technical analysis. Noel, I see you. You said you can't get on, but you're on. I see you in the room. Hey, Madhu. Glad you're here as well. Got a lot of people logging in now, so probably waiting for the market to close and all that fun stuff. John got in through the link in the text, so hey, Gwen, thank you. Yep. Struggle with it all. The Freedom Road. I like your honesty. That's one of the things that I always find refreshing about doing the YouTube live, is that we're okay being honest with each other. I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to be honest with me, and we're going to find a way to do whatever we can to become as successful as possible. Right? So. All right, so let's dive in. Let me just share my screen really quickly. And the first thing that I want to do in today's session is walk through what I see from an overall market standpoint. We're going to look at the S&P 500. We're going to look at the NASDAQ. We're going to look at the Dow, and I'm going to use the software that I use on a daily basis, VantagePoint, to do some analysis on those markets. I'll even look at light sweet crude oil and gold. You know, that's one of the things that I find refreshing about VantagePoint. And I know not everybody here has VantagePoint. That's okay. If you don't have VantagePoint and you ever have questions in today's session about what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, just ask. Use the chat box, or better yet, you can go to VantagePointForecast.com and ask your questions there. AI is an interesting lens to see through the noise. You are right about that, Christopher. You are right about that. Yes, Dennis, you can get to the YouTube from your desktop. Just go to VantagePoint and YouTube. You can subscribe while you're there and watch the live. By the way, if you're in the session, just a quick commercial. If you haven't subscribed to the VantagePoint YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, because this is a session that we do on a regular basis every couple of weeks. Different topics. We review options, Forex, futures. We're going to go over some of those futures today. Stocks. So many different strategies in this session, and it might be something good that you want to take advantage of. But for today, let's dive in. So we're looking at the S&P 500 right here on the screen. What I always like to look at for the S&P 500, obviously, is what the trend is expected to be. And with VantagePoint, I'm using this predicted moving average. It's a blue line that you see on the screen here. And the reason I'm pointing that out is simply because that is a line. Get my pen over here. That is a line that is not found everywhere in the world. It's found in the VantagePoint software. It operates like a moving average, like a simple moving average or an exponential moving average. But it is so much more powerful than that, because it actually has predictive information in the formula. For those of you that don't know and haven't seen this line before or the software before, what I'm using is an artificial intelligence software program, and it is analyzing global market relationships, right? Global market relationships. Jamal, I know you certainly have those asset classes, because you and I met in Tampa last weekend, and I know you've got some stocks and some things like that. So when we look at the S&P 500, and some of you might be looking at it in the ETF as a SPY. Jamal, maybe that's something you've got there, but if not, happy to talk to you afterwards. The S&P 500 is driven by a whole host of markets. I'm going to show you those markets right now just so that you can see what I'm talking about. When you have the question of, look, there's a lot of news, there's a lot of election talk, there's a lot of earnings, there's a lot of things, let's just call them things, going on in the markets, causing a lot of volatility, huge swings, uncertainty, fear, a lot of things like that create volatility. And when volatility happens, people sometimes freeze. Well, the software that I use at VantagePoint, you can see the S&P 500 is right in the middle. And when Chris said AI is an interesting lens to see through the noise, this is that lens that I would be talking about if you ask me what lens is Chris talking about in the chat. And the AI is doing what's called intermarket analysis. So to figure out what is happening with the S&P 500, VantagePoint's artificial intelligence is not just looking at the S&P 500 or the SPY. It's literally looking at gold. It's looking at the dollar. It's looking at natural gas or light sweet crude oil. It's also looking at equal weight portfolio. Like, it's looking at these ETFs, advisory shares, Dorsey Wright Short ETF, or Cedar Fair. This is a stock over here on the right. Who here would think, I need to go look at Cedar Fair to see what the S&P 500 is going to do, or I need to go look at Air Lease as a stock and see what the S&P 500 is going to do? There's nobody, not from a trading standpoint, that would be able to see that connection, because it is not a surface level connection. So when you're wondering, how do I see through the noise? How do I see through the volatility using artificial intelligence? Well, this is the best way that I know how, and that is using our patented process called intermarket analysis. So what VantagePoint does, and I'll walk through this, and then we'll do some technical analysis for everybody, is it's looking at the open, it's looking at the high, the low, the close, the open interest, the volume for all of these assets. We're talking about millions and millions of data points, not just here in the US, but all these assets around the world, like the euro and the yen are in here. And figuring out how they influence the S&P 500, whether they're going to drive it up, sideways, or down, and the degree of impact. Every single one of these markets is weighted by how much they might influence the S&P. Yes, I'm going through this quickly because I want to get to the forecast, right? I want to dig into the details, but I want everybody to understand why and how artificial intelligence, like in VantagePoint, is capable of seeing through the noise and taking that volatility and using it so you can benefit from it. This is how. It's not just looking at the S&P 500 in isolation by itself, all right? So when I look at the S&P 500, what I see is last week VantagePoint indicated the S&P 500 was expecting to pull back. There was a bearish forecast on the S&P 500, and we could expect some bearishness, right? Even with yesterday's bullishness coming off of the weekend, VantagePoint was still saying the overall trend is still expected to go down, okay? And why is that important? Well, today the overall trend continued to go down. You know, quarter point was shaved off today, 13.5 points. So 13.5 points shaved off of the S&P 500 means it traded on the low side of this prediction, right? It came down from where it was yesterday, just as the artificial intelligence suspected. Now, the question a lot of traders have is how far is it expected to go? Here's the great thing about the artificial intelligence here is that at 6:30 tonight, it's going to update again, and it's going to give me a new forecast of the trend. That blue line is either going to be pointing down, which is like a flag pointing down, you know. That blue line could be pointing sideways, right? Like the wind blowing sideways. You can't see the wind, but you know that the flag is pointing that way. Or it's going to be pointing up, indicating bullishness. Every night at 6:30, I get the benefit of the AI telling me that's the case. Well, right here on the ES, on the S&P 500, this is the futures market we're looking at. It's telling me I can expect bearishness going into this current trade day from a trend standpoint. I can also see that it's not going to be a very strong bearish day. Why? Because there is short-term strength in price. Well, if I've got an overall trend expected to be bearish, but short-term strength in price, that means the bearishness is not expected to fall off a cliff today, but again, pull back slightly. And that's exactly what we would be expecting from looking at the S&P 500, 55.96. If I put that on the chart right now, 55.96 is basically right there. That's a pullback from yesterday, right within that predicted trading range. Now, let me just dig in for a second. Because when I say right within that predicted trading range, do you see this little gray and green bar? This is what VantagePoint is forecasting as a potential range for today. And I got this at 6:30 last night. Where this is trading is right here, right now. And the bar is saying that there could be some volatility on the day, but ultimately it's going to be a bearish trend, which is exactly what we got today. But I don't stop there. You see, the AI is saying bearish trend, expecting a range somewhere in here. Short-term strength in price, which is holding prices up a little bit. And look at the momentum. I have 3 momentum indicators down here at the bottom of my chart that are forecasting that overall momentum is still bearish. But this blue line right here is telling me I've got a short-term bullish spike in the one-day predicted momentum. May not have said this before, but the indicators as I read them and as you see them in the VantagePoint software are all predictive indicators that you can get on a daily basis to help you understand where the trend is expected to go. So for those of you that have VantagePoint, I'm hoping that you're looking at the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Dow every day before you make your trading decisions, because I believe in a top-down market approach, which means you got to know what the overall indices are doing, what the markets are doing as a whole. Then you got to understand or know what the sectors are expected to do, so that as you dig into individual stocks, you have an artificial intelligence sentiment around where things are expected to go. Does anybody here, when I say artificial intelligence sentiment or an AI sentiment around where the market is expected to go, does that cause question? Do I need to stop and talk about that a little bit? Because that's something I think it's important for everybody to understand, is that if the artificial intelligence that is more powerful than you or me or all of us put together is saying that we're expecting bearishness over the next few days for the overall indices, for the sectors, and for the stocks you're interested in, do you understand how powerful that sentiment is before you go make a trading decision? And if you don't, or if I'm saying something you hadn't heard before and you want to dig into that, let me know that in the chat as well. Obviously, this is an open chat. This is a public broadcast. It's live. So if there's something that you want me to dig into, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know what it is. All right, so all in all, from an S&P standpoint, we can see we have overall bearishness expected. Not all the indicators are indicating bearishness, which means it's not going to fall off a cliff. We weren't expecting a rout today or tomorrow. We were expecting overall bearishness with prices floating somewhere on the bottom half of that predicted candle. Now I'm going to wait a second. I'm going to get a drink of water and I'm going to ask a question. And if you could hear my voice, answer this question in the chat. At 6:30 last night, going into the market today, if you knew that we could expect some bearishness, but the bottom wasn't going to fall out, would that have given you valuable information about today's trading that you can use day in and day out? And if you're a VantagePoint user, did it give you valuable information that you can use to your advantage? Let me know in the chat so I can make sure I'm tracking in the right way. If that's the case, if you're looking at that saying, yep, there's a benefit there, I can see where that would help, then let me know that too. And if the AI sentiment process that I just kind of walked through by looking at the ES and looking at the other indicators predicted for the S&P 500 is valuable, then or not valuable, let me know that too. The other thing I like to look at, just so everybody knows, is support and resistance. And I think if you've joined one of these sessions before, then you know that support and resistance is one of my go-tos as a secondary indicator on top of the VantagePoint predictive indicators. Thank you, William. Frederick, I appreciate you jumping in the chat and giving me that feedback. That's helpful. All right, Christopher, I like it. I like it. Thank you. One of the other things that's interesting about this is that VantagePoint has drawn a support level right here on the chart based off of this low. And it's given me a verified support zone. It's a shaded green area right here that says, you know what, if prices can get below this level and stay below this level for 2 consistent closes, then I could see it drop to this level. Well, guess what? That support point turns into a resistance point when it's broken. That support point, which is now going to be resistance or is acting as resistance for today, is you can see right there at 56.20. Now, we've talked about the ES being at 50, what was it, 55.95. Let me see if I can, yeah, 55.96, 55.98. So it's down below that. The way resistance works is that when you have multiple closes below a support point, that support point now comes resistance, which means prices are going to struggle to break that resistance point that used to be support, which means it's going to be very hard to get above that level. The only thing that can get you above that level, 2 things, volume and momentum. So when you look at this, you can see another reason why it's so valuable to use these kinds of indicators is because the predictive indicators are saying bearish, and the resistance or support point that turned into resistance is also saying bearish. And we have a level down here that if prices stay below that resistance point now, that it's an old support point that's resistance, we might expect this to go to 55.01, which is the next support level and the only thing stopping prices from going lower. So if you stop for a second and realize you have predictive information saying bearishness and you've got an old support point that turned into resistance holding prices down, right? Holding prices down, and you've got an all-time high up here that, you know, was hit and then pushed prices down off of that. You've got a lot of stuff. I'll just say stuff. You've got a lot of tools. You've got a lot of very valuable information. You got patented indicators saying still some bearishness expected, which means you know how to protect yourself. You know how to go into the markets because you've got clear bearishness on the horizon. Hey, David, appreciate you jumping in there and saying, yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you very much. We have a lot of people in the room. It apparently doesn't, I know it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, almost 4:30, and it's probably been a long day, but if you can get involved, please. I'd love to hear from you. Here's the NASDAQ. Now we can see VantagePoint forecasted the bearishness in the NASDAQ at the beginning of last week. Very, very clear. If I go and I put on those support and resistance indicators as well, and we just walk through the indicators step by step, you know exactly what to expect. All in all, we've got bearishness because that shaded area is red. The blue line is below the gray line. on the trend. Same as the S&P, where there's a little bit of strength in price, which means that the bottom's not going to fall out on the NASDAQ based on what VantagePoint is indicating here for the day. And it didn't. The bottom didn't fall out on the NASDAQ, right? You see that there's some old support points down here that were broken, but price couldn't stay below those, which means I automatically have an area that I would expect the NASDAQ to play, and that's right in here, above that support, below the close of yesterday. I've got a very clear area within that gray candle that I would expect the NASDAQ to play today. And that's exactly where the NASDAQ stayed today, right in this range, below the close of yesterday and above those support points by that predicted low. And down here at the bottom, I can see we got a lot of bearish momentum building into this. So this bearishness was identified early with these predictive momentum indicators. And then when the trend went with it and price went with it, we see the big pullback in the NASDAQ. Well, the question that people have is this pullback over? Well, until I see this shaded area and this line go above that gray line, the shaded area turn green and this line go above that, artificial intelligence is not telling me that the pullback is over, which means I can still expect some bearishness or at a minimum consolidation on the NASDAQ. And going into a trade day where those kinds of decisions are important, I think it's important to know that that is on the horizon. We can do the same exact analysis on the Dow. And the great thing about the Dow is we get a different picture of the Dow, meaning VantagePoint was indicating that there was some consolidation. The shaded area is green, but this blue line is pointed down. I have an outside bar predicted on the predicted high and low. I've got a lot of consolidation happening. I've got bearishness in price and bearishness in momentum, which means I can expect this to float a little bit lower today. Maybe not a trend reversal, but no doubt the YM was expected to float lower as well based on what the artificial intelligence is saying here. We do see that there was a resistance point up here off of the highs, all-time high up here. We can see that happen. And we can see that there is an old resistance point right here that was broken, that if I continue that line, you can see what's happening to price. Look, let's continue that dotted line right through. Look at that. Price stopped there, price stopped there, price stopped there. If I put my cursor on that old line, take a look at where it is. All right, let me erase some of that stuff. There you go. 40,525. 40,525. I want somebody on this call to help me understand where the NASDAQ went today. I do see that it was a down day. The question is, I'm sorry, I said NASDAQ. I meant Dow. Sorry, folks. Where did the Dow go on the day? Because what I'm seeing is that prices would be right here based on what the VantagePoint indicators are saying. Let me go see if I can verify that real quick. All right, today's range on the Dow, high of 40,795 and a low of 40,567. 40,795, right? We can see that right within that gray bar, no question about it. VantagePoint predicted a high of 40,961, so 795 is right there, close enough. And a low of 40,567, imagine that, that is right there, just above that old resistance point. So that old resistance point that is acting like support is propping up that price a little bit, just like it did on this day, on this day, on this day. That is a valuable piece of information that has been on the chart since May 21st back here, right? It's a valuable piece of information that's been on the chart and it's coming into play right now. You starting to see the big picture? You're starting to see how the artificial intelligence clarifies for me what I'm expecting in the markets and what I can be expecting in the markets, because I think that's one of the pieces of information that's very, very valuable, is understanding what to expect. I can then go look at the VIX, and in the volatility index of the VIX, you can see VantagePoint had a very powerful forecast on the volatility of the VIX. If I look at my one-day information on the VIX, I can see that there was a big pop. VantagePoint forecast of the VIX was going to increase, and then now it's pulling back. which drove the markets down. And now the question is, how far down will they drive? Well, the VIX is pulling back. Fear is pulling back a little bit, which could cause the markets to stabilize this bearish trend. People have question around where that stabilization can come into play. And again, using our old resistance points as support points, you can see that there is a level of stabilization that we can expect right down here around 55.42 to 55.16. That's where we'd expect things to stabilize in the short-term downtrend if the VIX continues to fall or fear begins to lessen. All right. Light sweet crude oil. This is an important one. Light sweet crude oil is one of those markets that you've got to keep an eye on. Light sweet crude oil impacts so many things out there. And the forecast for light sweet crude oil, if we zoom in on this, take a look. VantagePoint forecasted light sweet crude oil on July 10th. Forecasted it down on July 10th. Today is July 23rd. Well, since then, prices have beginning to fall on light sweet crude oil. And today, they're down over $1 at 77.27. So what VantagePoint forecasted for light sweet crude oil, and you can see it, shaded area, red. Blue line pointed down. Neural index, red. Momentum, creating lower highs. Everything on light sweet crude oil since this crossover back here on 710 has been saying bearishness expected. And crude oil losing $1 today was not a surprise to the VantagePoint software. As a matter of fact, from a predicted low standpoint, it even predicted down below 77.50. So you can see that right here on the chart. Valuable information, folks. That's information that, you know, a lot of traders don't have access to that wish they did. The predicted low of 77.44 and crude oil went down to 77.28. I mean, that's a fantastic forecast for the VantagePoint software that I'm sure you could have benefited from. Even when we put on support and resistance on here, for those of you that are trading light sweet crude oil, take a look. Take a look at this. Prices broke below support and then could not get back above support yesterday. What would you expect price to do if we've got bearish momentum, bearish price strength, and an inability to break that old support point? Yeah, fall. So what's happening with light sweet crude oil today was not unexpected. As a matter of fact, it's exactly what VantagePoint indicated it was going to do. All right, we've got to spend some time on that. We're expecting crude oil to continue falling from that perspective. Gold, you can see VantagePoint had a bullish forecast on gold starting here. All of the indicators were saying at that point, bullishness on the horizon. Even with this strong pullback, the 2-day prediction has not been faked out. Look, the 2-day prediction still has a blue line above, saying that there's some consolidation happening, but not necessarily a trend reversal yet. It even predicted a higher high today and a higher low today. There's some weakness in price, but not enough to change the direction of this. And you can see there's consolidation. Matter of fact, I think gold was up a little bit today. The question you might have is there enough to push gold back up? And what the artificial intelligence is saying when you read these indicators is no, right? VantagePoint is indicating there is a lot of bearish momentum working into gold. Price is weak. So this short-term pop in gold could be just that, a very short-term pop in gold. And we could see things fall again. Now, when I put support and resistance on this chart, you can see why I'm saying that. There you go. You see this old resistance point right here and this old resistance point right here. Take a look at where all those old resistance points are. 2406, 2406.47 roughly, call it 2407. That's where these old resistance points are, where if prices can't close above 2407 and stay above 2407 for a couple of days, then we could see gold continue to fall. Well, right now, gold is at 2407. It's sitting on that resistance point and there's no momentum or price strength to break through it. If there's no momentum, no bullish momentum and no bullish price strength, it's going to be very, very difficult for gold to get through back above that resistance point and then stay above it to ride up to the all-time high. So overall bearishness expectation and the 1-day forecast for gold is saying exactly that. And then here's the dollar. When you look at the dollar, you can see that VantagePoint forecasted the dollar starting up last week on, what is that, Thursday. And we've got bullishness from an overall neural index standpoint. This is predicting strength over the next 2 days, by the way. This is predicting bullishness over the next 2 days. And momentum was all bullish starting back here, saying, hey, momentum is starting to push bullishly on this. And then the prediction for the trend and the strength went along with momentum. And when all those three things agreed, what did we get but a bullish push on the dollar? Dollar's at 104, 185 today. VantagePoint forecasted a potential high of 104.234, a low of 103.831, which means it's pushing on the top side of this and doing exactly what the artificial intelligence indicated. This kind of analysis, folks, whether you do it in VantagePoint or not, is up to you, right? That's up to you. When you stop and you think and you look at this and you say, okay, how can I use this on a daily basis? And that is doing exactly what I'm doing, using the artificial intelligence to come up with your conclusion based on what the indicators are saying. That's one of the things that everybody, I think a lot of people struggle with is reading the indicators and understanding what they're saying before they make a trading decision. We put our emotion into it, right? We put our ideas into it. And that's one of the things that's very difficult as a trader, is that when you look at that kind of movement, somebody was asking for, is that natural gas? Let me see. Dennis, if we have a chance to look at natural gas, we'll look at natural gas here when I'm done with the agenda. Sure, yeah, I see it on there. And by the way, if you have a chart you want to take a look at, pop it into the chat. I usually save some time at the end to look at some of those charts and dig through it. But before we do, I want to look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, so we can talk through what VantagePoint was indicating for Bitcoin and Ethereum. Because when you look at this and you see a bullish crossover and you see strength changing from bearish to bullish, and you see all of this momentum indicating bullishness, there was no mistaking what Bitcoin was expected to do based on VantagePoint's forecast. Right here, 7/13. July 13th, the artificial intelligence said there is enough of a bullish forecast from those intermarkets, and I can show you the intermarkets. Look. When I say intermarkets, for those of you that might have missed it, this is what the artificial intelligence is looking at to forecast the direction of Bitcoin. Monero, Dash, some other cryptocurrencies, Zdash, Ethereum, but it's also looking at natural gas, Scott's Miracle Grow, PowerShares, Qs, right? Nobody in their right mind would be able to look at all of these markets and figure out what the heck Bitcoin is expected to do. And that's why we're using artificial intelligence, because all of the intermarkets for every stock, every asset, we were looking at futures before, every cryptocurrency are independent for that asset, right? Those were the ones for Bitcoin. Those are the intermarkets that said Bitcoin was expected to start trending up back on July 13th. Now, I don't have to tell you what Bitcoin has done since July 13th, but I'm going to. Look at that. Big, huge move to the upside. $9,000 per coin increase, or 16% hypothetical gains there, where you can see this is a very powerful move to the upside. And what VantagePoint is saying about this move to the upside is we could expect prices to pull back to 67,110 or even further based on, watch this, support and resistance. Look. There you go. Where is this resistance level that's trying to act like support? 67,110. That's right where that predicted low is. And we also have one down at 63.64. We see the momentum peeling off of this. Look at this rolling over. Momentum is starting to turn bearish on this, which means it's going to be very difficult to get up into this higher part of this zone, and we can expect some profit taking. Even the short-term forecast, we've got some consolidation happening. Is VantagePoint saying that the Bitcoin trend is over? No, by no means is it saying that that trend is expected to come to an end at this point. But there is some volatility in this trend because momentum is peeling off. And when momentum leaves, it's very hard for a trend to push through resistance when momentum starts to leave. And you can see momentum is starting to leave Bitcoin, which means traders have to start protecting their downside based on this information. Ethereum, this is a very long chart on Ethereum, but you can see the same information right here. July 12th on Ethereum, the day before Bitcoin, Really powerful move to the upside. Still some bullishness expected. Momentum is also peeling off of this, but you can see that there is a very powerful resistance level on here. Look at that. You see that dotted line? How many candles are hitting that resistance? One, set it, hit it, failed, hit it, failed, hit it, failed. Well, the question is Ethereum expected to hit that and fail or break through it? Well, based on what we're seeing from Ethereum standpoint, we've got a lot of bullishness going on. Momentum hasn't turned bearish yet. It could sit right at it. Where is that level again? Let's put it on the chart and go check out Ethereum. 35.36. 3,536 bucks is where that resistance point is. Based on what we see from momentum, not expecting price to break that resistance point. Matter of fact, if it gets up to it, it's going to stall and would trade right in this range. Right in that range is, call it 35.18, 35.10, probably less than that. But still, you can see there's not enough momentum to break through that resistance point. VantagePoint is not predicting bullish momentum. It's predicting consolidated and bearish momentum, which means prices can't break through resistance if it doesn't have the push of momentum. And for those of you that don't know that, that's one of the keys to support and resistance, is understanding that there are some factors at play that can help you read how likely price is expected to break through momentum. And that is, support and resistance, that is momentum and volume. So, hey, Carla, what are the red and green rectangle shaded areas called? Don't have that on my chart. You must be talking about support and resistance. Support and resistance are verified support and resistance. Carla, if you're a VantagePoint family member, reach out to the VantagePoint University and they can help you, figure out how to turn that on. All right, that's something that they can certainly do. One of the other things that I wanted to talk through today before we dig into some of the other charts that are suggested is earnings, right? People have the question all the time around, how's VantagePoint around earnings, and can you look at some of the recent earnings and help me understand what I'm seeing, what I'm expecting from an earnings standpoint? Absolutely, we can do that. For instance, here's GE Aerospace. You can see if we look at the predictive indicators, up, bullish. VantagePoint was indicating bullishness for GE today based on the predictive indicators. A lot of volatility in GE. You can see that on the chart right there very clearly. But what VantagePoint was saying is yesterday it was expecting prices to move higher in through earnings. And if I recall correctly, GE certainly jumped post earnings this morning. They had their earnings readout this morning, and VantagePoint, obviously this forecast came out yesterday. So you can see how the artificial intelligence provides you, as Chris said, and Chris, I love that line, very, I would say, a valuable lens to wade through that volatility. Comcast, another one. The difference with Comcast is we got a fresh crossover yesterday with a fresh neural index and predictive differences rolling over and momentum changing. I can put on support and resistance on this as well. We can do all of the analysis that we've been doing so far today over the last 40 minutes and see that we've got old resistance points right there, right where price failed yesterday. We've got bearishness going into momentum. It's going into earnings. Now, you may not be trading through earnings. Some traders don't trade through earnings, and that's okay. But what VantagePoint is saying is that there is certainly bearishness expected in this. And this is, by the way, check out this trend right before it. Look at that move, right? A quick pop in Comcast before earnings, in, out before the earnings date. Good 4.3% in 7 trading days from a hypothetical trade standpoint. And then bearishness ensues. Bearishness projected based on the artificial intelligence, and bearishness is what we got, right? UPS. Let's take a look at UPS. When I look at UPS, what do I see? I see that there is bearishness again moving into today. You can see that bearishness. You can see that the shaded area is red. We can see that there is a little bit of price strength. So price was not expected to jump off the chart on UPS, but certainly some bearishness. Now this is going into earnings. And a lot of times going into earnings, when you're getting some bearishness from the artificial intelligence, it causes a big move to the downside. There was a big gap lower, and prices are at 127 for UPS. So certainly a very, very strong bearish move post earnings. And there's several other ones in there that have really created, some some angst. I think somebody was asking about GM. Who was that asking about GM? That's one of the ones that had earnings today. Gale. You can see VantagePoint had a shade at a crossover actually 2 days ago. VantagePoint was indicating bearishness on GM. The Neural Index was red. The predictive differences had rolled over and been bearish, and unfortunately that prognostication came true for GM. And I think did they just have earnings here this afternoon, I believe. They certainly pulled back from an earnings standpoint, and there was bearishness expected there on the one-day trend forecast. So not unexpected. Now, one note I want to make, just so we're on the same page. VantagePoint does not forecast earnings prices, does not forecast how far the move is expected to move around earnings. That's not what VantagePoint does. VantagePoint uses artificial intelligence and intermarket analysis to forecast where the trend is expected to go once there's earnings information, or once there's anything going on in the markets, right? That's what the artificial intelligence does. Tesla had earnings, I think, today as well, and you can see more consolidation, right? We've got things going sideways on here. We've got bearishness. We've got a little bit of price strength, but overall bearish momentum. That would say, look, if I looked at this and I said, what does VantagePoint say about Tesla? I would say it would be right around in this range. I'm coloring the 250 mark, but that really ranges for where you trade and how you trade, right? If I put my cursor right on it, 249.08, 248, you can see that on the screen. And we're looking right at the charts that, I think earnings for Tesla just happened probably when I started talking, right? So Coke, somebody said KO. I think I have that in here. That was earnings today as well, was it not? Somebody help me out. Coca-Cola have earnings today? Coca-Cola did have earnings today. There you go. VantagePoint had a fresh cross to the downside, right? Boom. That's a one-day forecast. The Neural Index was saying down. The Neural Index was saying down. The predicted high and predicted low were saying down. We got a rollover from some of the indicators right there in the VantagePoint software. And although they had a positive earnings, there was a pullback. VantagePoint forecasted bearishness today. And, you can certainly go check it out, but you can see that there was bearishness today expected for Coke. And that happened, that might have been an early morning one. I don't remember. I don't have all of the earnings dates and times memorized, but you can see we're seeing exactly what's happened. Natural gas, somebody wanted to take a look at that. So let's pull up natural gas. All right, so we're looking at the natural gas market. And our one-day forecast on the natural gas market, if we zoom in on this, I'm not sure what natural gas did today, but you can see that we had a very bearish trend going on. The 2-day forecast had a lot of bearishness. Look at the momentum, though. Momentum, guys, check this out. Momentum started pushing higher way back here. You see that? You see how that happens from a momentum standpoint? When you see that happen from a momentum standpoint, that tells you that there's something going on from a natural gas standpoint, and our one-day forecast had some bullishness working itself in. Now our 2-day forecast, we don't have a crossover. You can see right in there that line is below, which means until that crosses, are we like gung-ho to the upside? But certainly some bullishness building in natural gas. If we get a crossover on that medium-term crossover to match that short-term crossover, let me say it for those people that don't have VantagePoint. When the 2-day predicted trend is bullish and agrees with the 1-day predicted trend being bullish, now I get some real good confluence and prices are expected to move higher. If you're looking at this and you're a natural gas trader, who asked for it? Bill, was that you? Bill, I think Bill, you might have asked for natural gas. I'm looking in the YouTube to make sure I've got the chat worked out. Dennis asked for it, and I think Bill was interested in it. Got it. So you can see the 1-day forecast had some bullishness building in. The 2-day forecast, there's some consolidation building in. And the question that people have is, Daniel, why do you call that consolidation? Because I get this question often, meaning I can see the blue line is starting to point up. Sure, you can see that. But did you notice that the shaded area between the blue and the gray line is red? Right? When you see that the shaded area between the red line, the blue and is red, but the blue line is pointed up, that's indicating consolidation or sideways price movement, right? That's what that's indicating. There is strength in price and there is bullish momentum happening. which means the 2-day forecast says that there is some consolidation happening. And we can see prices, again, if I point sideways, and I can drop my cursor right there. If I point to that, that's $2.32, right? Think about that. $2.32. Let's go look at natural gas. Let me go see if I can find it here. Dennis, you're probably faster than I am. Heck, you probably have your platform pulled up, but let me see if I can get to natural gas here. There you go. Open at 224. The high today was 226. The low today 212. Right there. Right exactly where my line is. 226 was the high. Went down to 212. There you go. That consolidation, and that's why it's so powerful to use these. Is the bullishness expected to happen? Is that one-day bullishness that we saw? Look, if I go to the one-day forecast, certainly, absolutely, there could be a really powerful bullish trend going on here, right? But right now, today, prices are expected to float sideways and starting to turn bullish. Look at this momentum. As soon as we get that momentum through the center lines, it's going to be gangbusters for natural gas, mark my words. So appreciate you bringing that to the table, Dennis and Bill. I'm glad you were interested in that. What was the other one? GBP, JPY. All right, let's go look. GBP, JPY. Let me see if I can just search it here. Go. All right. VantagePoint has been bearish. The pound yen since 712, right? You can see it's been forecasting bearishness in the pound yen since 712. VantagePoint's also indicating here, and for those of you that don't trade Forex, take a look at this chart, right? Look, I'll zoom in on it for you. Take a look at this chart. You may never have traded Forex a day in your life. And when you're using artificial intelligence, you can do things like this. You can see that there was a crossover on July 12th to the bearish side. The neural index was red and the predictive differences were pointed down. That means we had a bearish trend forecast, we had bearish price expectation, and we had bearish momentum expected, right? So when we look at that, what do we see? Well, we see bearishness. Well, last night we look at the same information. Bearish trend, bearish price, mostly bearish momentum. There is one momentum indicator that's starting to float sideways, which means there could be some consolidation happening. VantagePoint forecasted a pretty low 202 down on the GBP, like saying you could expect prices down at, you can see in the top left corner, predicted low of 202.52. Low is 200, went below that, which is great news for this forecast, because if I'm going to be wrong, I want to be wrong to the side that makes me more money, right? And if it went down to 200, that means from a bearish standpoint, look at that, folks. That's 457 pips to the downside since VantagePoint forecasted this pair down. As a Forex trader, one trend over a week capturing 450 pips shows the power in the artificial intelligence. So nice work, everybody. Today was a great session. I think your questions and your charts that you brought to the table, very, very valuable. Oh, we got another one, crowd. Oh, I love it. Oh, man, a little bit of news about crowd. When did VantagePoint forecast crowd down, folks? Take a look at your screen. Who was asking about this? Joe. Joe, take a look at this. What day did VantagePoint forecast crowd down? What did the neural index say? And was momentum bearish or bullish going into that day? I'm going to end on this note. VantagePoint cannot forecast global outages. But when VantagePoint is looking at minute patterns and relationships and doing analysis that is impossible for traders like you and me to do, impossible for humans to do, and it indicates bearishness all at the same time starting on 710, and traders are short that opportunity. That outage just makes opportunity for those traders that use that kind of information. Down 31% 9 trading days. No way could we have forecast a global outage. However, VantagePoint did forecast bearishness based on what it was seeing. The artificial intelligence is powerful. If you don't have this, you can always go to VantagePointForecast.com. After looking at CrowdStrike and realizing how powerful this is, I think it's safe to say if you don't have this, you should. So reach out to us and let us know if you got any questions. You can call our office, 1-800-732-5407. Thank you for dropping that in the chat. We're always here to help. If you've got a question or you want to dig into this a little bit further, let me know. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for the VantagePoint users and family members that are here that use our software. Thank you for being part of the VantagePoint family. It's always good to have like-minded people utilizing powerful tools and information, and I appreciate the opportunity to help you. And for everybody on today's session, thank you for letting me give you the view from my vantage point. Happy trading, everybody. Have a good day. I'm signing off.